of the agenda items? No. No conflicts. And just a public forum. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Greta and Co. If I can just get you to come up and just introduce yourself and why you're attending the meeting.
First of all, thank you very much for hearing us today in your public forum in regard to our Ōtorohanga lease. For those of you who do not know me, I am Brett Withers. I am the chair of the Ottawa Committee. My colleague is our treasurer, Morgan Strawbridge, and you will all know Deb Hill, our manager. I need to declare a conflict of interest in regard to Tori Mala, who sits on your board, and also as an employee of our support house, Tori. Many people from our communities of Ōtorohanga, Kapia, Tikawiti and further benefit from the diverse range of services our Tori offers. Our funders rely on a strong financial base and management. Our manager, Deb Hill, at the forefront of our service, has a large team behind her working tirelessly. There are many staff and volunteers, including their respective committees, etc. Our services are well known in our community. COVID, of course, impacted us as all. We had to manage increase in workload, distributing support to many isolated families in various ways. Our services continue to widen the reach via new and innovative ways, as many businesses have also. We now have telehealth or Zoom for our people to get counselling, attend meetings and fulfil training opportunities as an option. Our building is often bursting at the seams. We have been able to temporarily access additional space beside our Ōtoro. Excuse me. Due to that open and basic facility, the adjoining room is used in the main for storage. We need to access that space internally so as to utilise the area fully. We do not have a written lease for either building. This proves to be a limiting factor for us. We cannot secure funding without security of tenure. Funders cannot revamp a building only to have a lease expire. Excuse me, would I be able to just get a glass of water? I've just got a really dry mouth, probably nerves. That's better. So I got to where funders cannot revamp a building only to have a lease expire. We are an essential service. We need you to be aware of our predicament, being despite our efforts for 2 years, we still have no written lease for any period for either adjacent building. We need to access both areas and revamp them. We are surprised to find the town plan has our area set aside as a possible site for a new building. If that is actually going to proceed, we just need transparency so we can look for alternatives. But alternatives are rare and a huge upheaval for all, and might, I suggest, not be imminent. A lease in the interim would solve this. We are mindful of not compromising our community's well-being. Our services assist particularly for the lower socio-economic groups of our areas. We must remember also the working poor, represented in all communities that seek help more regularly now, which is a sad growing statistic. We need room. We need to function efficiently, and we are being hamstrung. One alternative put by council is to offer the building behind our whare, accessed off Lawrence Street. This can at first seem like a viable option. Our thoughts at this point are against disjointing our services with separate buildings. That alternative premise would compromise both our staff and our client safety. If we were to split our services off, it would actually increase our costs, and quite substantially. Some being administrative costs, security for staff and clients who are often minors, for whom our safety plans dictate that we cannot have staff work alone without backup support. Similarly, in any of our services, yet those risks aside, still we would have no security of tenure if that building were utilised. There would be no advantage. All our services being together in our existing whare allows people access to complementary help collaboratively. This reduces negativity for clients, giving them a one-stop shop. It also reduces risking human nature of accessing multiple agencies or duplicating support via different agencies for the same service. The core of our kaupapa is well-being of our community. The benefit of our Main Street location means we are truly public and freely available. The team being in one location is support to all the staff in the delivery of our vital roles. The old adage, if it isn't broken, don't fix it, comes to mind. We operate well where we are. We are accessible, reliable, and utilised. It seems like a lot to risk for our people. We respectfully implore you for your support of our case for a written lease from council on an urgent basis for at least 5 years. Thank you for listening, and we are happy to answer any questions. So I stand back down.
You can stay there. Thanks for that, Greta. I just want to check, have any of the members got any questions? I just remember that the questions are to be confined to obtaining information or clarification on the matters by the speaker.
Sorry, Greta, it's Jo Butcher. You said that the second building that's been bought by the council just recently, it's in the town plan that they want to reuse it for something else or pull it down and rebuild.
Possibly that area, including the building that we are currently in.
As well.
Yes, and the
Okay.
building behind us, I believe, so that whole block, but I'm not actually sure.
Right. You haven't been given any information why that might be, or
No, we just looked on the town
town
plan.
plan? Do
And
we
saw
have
that
any
it was-
access to that? Was there a Pacific in there? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is minutes of the 5th December 2022 meeting. And I'll take the minutes as being read. Was there any amendments or clarification required in that? Happy with the minutes? Yep. And can I have a mover and a seconder? Trina mover. And seconder. Yep. Steve. And all in favour? And against? And carried. Okay, item 7 is road naming. And I'll hand this report over to manager of property.
You, Chair. So I'm here today to present the report on road naming, the Northern King Country Developments Limited. I'll take the report as read. I'll just summarise what the recommendation is from staff. So in essence, we have a developer who's doing the subdivision on Harper Avenue. And part of his consent required him to put forward the names of the new roads to be vested in council. So he's chosen the names of the roads and he's at a stage now where he needs to get addresses and things for services. And the recommendation is the road names that he has chosen. Happy to answer any questions.
Yep, it's through you, Chair. Just looking through the report, it's there seems to be a little bit of a contradiction here as far as applying for road names is concerned. On 4.6, it says that no public notification is required when first naming a new road, and new road names will need to be erected. Signs, I presume, will need to be erected by council. And then 5.3, it actually says that anyone wishing to recommend a road name to council must consult on road names with all the affected property owners on roads serviced through that development and surrounding roads, I presume. So I presume that's been done, or is there any evidence to say that that's been done? Or, as far as I know, it hasn't been presented to council, consultation evidence. What's the story with that?
Sure. So this development was actually part of a resource consent subdivision process. So the consultation revolved around the requirements under the RMA and the resource consent. So it was a notifiable consent and has met all the conditions of that with who it needed to consult with. Iwi were also consulted, Niha Nui were written to, and advised of the consent that it was notifiable if they had any areas of concern or wanted to know more, and we received no response from Niha Nui.
Okay, so as far as the surrounding roads like Harper's Ave and Thompson Ave, so all of the residents have been consulted on that?
No, they're not.
But under the policy, I think it says that they have to be, so, and then evidence of that has to be provided to the council. So is that, why has that not been done?
So through you, Chair, so the policy doesn't require every neighbouring street and every neighbour to be consulted. It's with the people affected by a road naming process. So a good example when the time comes will be such as, where Ken Phillips lives. I'm not sure what we refer to that as off the main North Road there. The developer there missed the opportunity to propose some names for that road. And now because the titles have been finalised and all the residents are residing there, that's actually an example of where the neighbours and affected people on that street will have to be part of that road naming process.
Okay. Sorry.
Through the chair, may I speak? Now, Trish, the reason why Steve's asking this question. If you go there 5.3.1, which isn't in this report, but it goes to council must consult on road names with all the affected property owners serviced by roads of the development, even if the property serviced by these roads are outside the development, so that there would be Harvest and Thompson, would it not, considering they have to go through Harvest or Thompson to get to the development.
Through you, the chair. This is a little bit different because it's part of a subdivision consent. So the requirements of the consent are set out as part of that process. This is purely to allocate names to meet council's own consent conditions for the subdivision. So all of that has been addressed through the consent application. I mean, this is where it's a little bit different.
Yes, it does make that 5.3 to 1
Yeah.
a bit grey.
So the consultation was all done with
in the
all the
consent
adjoining
conditions.
people and interested parties as part of that resource consent process.
And this year's going, I'm just, sorry, I was a bit slow reading this part. So in July 2019, council adopted its first road naming policies. This is all in accordance with the road naming policy stuff we did back in 2019. I'm trying to remember where it was.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
2019.
Sure, thank you.
Through you, your chair. I think it would have been quite helpful to maybe have some of that resource consent stuff put with the report, so it wasn't confusing, because if you read that in conjunction with our roading policy, it's really grey. It doesn't link together. Like with the consultation, you're saying the consultation was done with the resource consent, but the consultation with the resource consent wasn't done for these names. Or if it was, then we could have had that added into the report. And I think consultation with iwi, I think going forward, we've learnt a lot from our town concept plan. We can't just consult with one body, and if there was no answer, then is it really consultation? Thank you.
There any other questions?
Um, Oh, sorry, through you, Chair. Just wanting to know, how these names originally come about. Are they, because he's the developer, he can just put any name forward?
Through you, the chair, correct.
Okay, it's then within that initial thing, it's no consultation like with the town as a whole, because it's something that may be relevant to them.
That wasn't a requirement. of the
Okay.
consent.
Okay, thank you.
And any other questions? Clarification required?
Through you, the chair, it might be worth considering, because we've discussed it in the past. We haven't been under much growth pressure in Ōtorohanga in the past, but we're going to see more road naming reports like this coming in front of us. Some of the bigger councils, and we discussed this back in 2019 when we developed the first road naming policy, have worked with iwi and other groups to develop a list of names, kind of like a pick list, to choose from, to put forward to developers to use. That's something you could consider. At the time, we decided we weren't under enough pressure with development to really put a lot of effort into that, and also we're always sort of a bit short resourced as well. So, but that's something worth thinking about if you think it's more important now than it was then.
Thanks, Trish. I think that's really important to come up with a list and revisit our roading policy. Yeah, thank you. And I don't know if we need to recommend that to council, that the roading policy is relooked at. Yeah, obviously it's not going to help us with this one.
Trish, do you know when the next date to look at the road policy is? So renewed on is it 3 yearly or 5 yearly?
It should have a tracking on the document, but I don't think it did. No, it says no review date. Our new templates have all that on the covering page now, but no, I guess it can be reviewed as required according to your direction and Tanya's direction and staff spending resource and time on it.
And just on the road policy thing, can you just clarify when someone does a subdivision, how many lots until they actually need a road name?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Sorry, that's a planning question.
I think it's like 8.
I thought it was 8, but I don't want to guess at that.
Any other questions? All right, so I've got 2 here. That the recommendation. Members had the recommendation of 7.1 being recommended council, the naming is suggested. Happy with that? And a second recommendation that the road policy be reviewed. Right. I'm gonna have to close. What are we calling this policy? The road name. So I just want to get it really correct. Yeah. That road name policy done review. Thank you. It's reading road, sorry. Option 2, to not recommend to council the naming of the three new roads.
But we're going to option 1 to recommend to council.
Yeah. This is one. Okay, so we're looking to adopt the staff recommendation. That Ōtorohanga Planning Board recommends to council. Pursuant to section 319. Of the Local Government Act, the Ōtorohanga Council resolves that the following road names are given to Northern Country Developments Limited subdivision on Harper's Ave. Ōtorohanga shown slots 214, 221 and 223 on the attached subdivision theme. That this is best for council's public roads being lot 221 Wilshire Drive, lot 223 Ince Place, and lot 214 Robbery Place. Okay, all in favour?
And against?
All right, so all those in favour, aye, and a mover and seconder. Seconder. Mover Peter, seconder Joe, and those against. And mover and seconder. Just get rid of seconder station. All right.
Yeah.
Go straight up here, please. Yeah.
Anyone that's staying, then let us know. Just whether we get extra
Okay. And if you can put your hands up higher, so everyone can see, recommend to council the naming of 3 roads. And option 2, to not recommend to council the naming of 3 roads. Okay. So recommended resolution has failed.
Through you, the chair, and I wonder if it's worth calling Andrew in. I just want to mention that the board is now in conflict with a requirement that it has given its developer. We've required, council has asked him to do this, and he is fulfilling his requirements. Just sort of want to, he's doing what he thinks we've asked him to do. Just wanted to mention that, and I guess if you wanted to hear more about that from a planning perspective, whether it's worth Andrew joining us.
I'm just going to seek some advice. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, we should be using the microphones to speak. Sorry, Trish. So I've asked Andrew to come down just so that we can clarify some things, and there were some questions that were asked as well. So the community board is making a recommendation to council You've said that you do not recommend to council that those names be given to those roads. So I guess we just need to understand from a kind of planning perspective. I guess council has the ultimate decision-making power here, so they can either take the board's recommendation or not. But I guess I'm sort of taking this through to its nth conclusion. If council accepts the recommendation from the community board, where does that leave us, Andrew?
Good afternoon. So you are asking what position does that place council in? So council would be, we're being asked to make a decision that's contrary to a decision that's already approved. So you, you're rounding up on yourself, basically.
So the consent conditions gives the developer the right to name the roads.
Gives
As
the
long as that-
condition the right to submit his choice of names for the road.
The council does have the ultimate veto to go back and say they're not acceptable.
I imagine so, yeah.
And then do we need to provide alternatives
I suppose you have to
or reasons why?
yeah, so can I go back to the very start of this?
Yeah,
So when this application was received back in 2000, right at the end of 2017, I think it was actually, but it was heard in 2018, council delegated first of all, council notified it, so it became a notified application. And then council then delegated the authority to hear and decide the decision on the subdivision to an independent commissioner. So a number of parties were notified as part of that application. And one of those parties were the neighbours, NZTA, Nehi Nui RNC. So when an application of this scale is notified, all aspects of the application are out there for consultation. So people can, be that cultural, heritage, environmental, science, geotechnical, utilities, transport, all number of aspects. So it's open for notification. People are free to make comment on any aspect of the proposal that they have concerns about. So I think basically the issues that mainly arose from this one were about amenity, transport. There were conditions around impact on neighbours and stuff like that. And to my knowledge, there was nothing raised about the road names or the street names. At the time, we didn't have a road name policy. Commissioner came up with a generic condition that the applicant submit a number of road names. And that's what we did. And now in the interim, we introduced a road naming policy. So maybe a bit of inflation. It's done everything that was asked of them.
so I think one of the questions was if Nehi Nui didn't reply, why didn't we engage with other Māori? Was that the question? Because we have a statutory obligation through Mani Portal, Māori Trust Board, who were in prison at the time. They gave us the I guess the instruction to that was the organisation that we engaged with. So if there's no response for whatever reason, then or they don't want to didn't want to contribute or respond, then we don't just then say, oh, shall we find the next organisation to engage with? It's kind of like they were the body that we were kind of asked to go to, I guess.
Yeah, if I may see, if I use the analogy of a sports game, we are supposed to be an independent regulator in that process. The referee doesn't stop the game for something he sees and then go over and ask one of the captains if he, has a second opinion on it. And, you've got to tread a line down as near as you can to being fair and impartial to all parties in these processes.
I think for me, the confusion is the resource consent. They did what they, were asked to do. There was nothing in the resource consent. They didn't have road names then. So, and then our roading policy, council's roading policy talks about engaging with properties surrounding their properties, which obviously they haven't got titles, but people pay deposits, but they're not owners, and servicing areas. So for me, that means Thompson Ave and Harper's Ave, because they will use those roads to get home. So for me, it's a conflict of what the resource consent is saying you have to engage. Our policy saying you have to engage. They're saying they did through the resource consent, but they didn't for the road naming because they didn't have the road names in. That's where I have this. Yeah, so that's why I voted against.
If I may, there's no people living on the roads that are, which the roads names are proposed. Those people that there now, their names are already wrote.
Have you got the roading policy? Can you read out that paragraph? Because
Through the chair,
it's not those roads.
May I speak, please, Chair? I think if in the report, if it had just said that the commissioner's rulings had said this, and this, which preceded the road naming policy, which was adopted in 2019, it would have made it a lot clearer. But there's nothing in the report that says this here preceded the road naming policy, because road naming policy contradicts what was agreed to with the consent application. So that's where the level. So when Trish explained just then that as part of the consent application, that this is all okay, it was all signed up by the commissioner, then I was happy with that, and I would have, if I was to vote, if I had the opportunity, I would have voted in favour. Then prior to that, I would have voted against it because our road naming policy contradicts what was said. So if that was in the report and was clarified earlier on, we may not be having this discussion right now, because it does they do contradict each other.
And that was my thought too. So because the road names were not set at the road names weren't set when the resource consent was notified, does that mean that you now need to publicly notify?
'Publicly notify the road names to you. Yes, that's the point.
5.3 is fine road names.
For you, the chair, that's in the context of when it's not a development, and there's not a developer who's been required to nominate roads for like the example I gave when we were offline with what was referred to out at QQ as Thompson Lane, loosely by the locals, and we went through a process to call it Teal Lane. We had to consult with the residents that were residing there because forever they'd been referring to it as Thompson Lane. We couldn't actually call it that legally because we had a Thompson Road. So that's the difference. This is a new subdivision. There are no current residents. Anyone interested in buying a lot can speak to the developer and say, what are you thinking of naming it? Because if it's something ghastly, we don't want to buy it. So it's just a completely different situation where you've got a new subdivision developer with the right to name it.
Yeah, that it's all very well, but it doesn't say affected property serviced by roads in the development. So it is a development. You don't have two separate things in our roading policy, one for subdivisions and one for little roads, so it's confusing still.
So through you, Chair.
I just say, so fairly recently, Sergeant Place was named as a development. Can I ask what process went through to get that name? Because if we now go through a different process, I feel we're being inconsistent to two different developers. And we need to be careful. What process went through for the Sergeant Place, and are we now changing the goalposts? Is what I'm asking.
Report, the exact same process, the exact same recommendation, the exact same reason why. He was the developer, he had the right to nominate the name.
So then I ask a general question, are we being inconsistent now?
I actually thought that's why we did our voting policy, naming policy, because of that fact of Sergeant Place. We did it after that, did we not?
We did do it after it, but not for that reason. We just had a surge of roads coming our way and thought we just needed a policy. Look, we got about 6 more coming your way, exactly the same scenario, so good to get our heads around it now. Developers investing a lot of money, the rights to name their roads.
Through you, Chair. Can I just clarify again? Has everyone been consulted? And if they haven't, Katrina, you say someone hasn't been consulted. This is all new to me. Who hasn't been consulted?
Through you, your chair, I'm just going off what the voting policy says in 5.31. Anyone wishing to recommend a road name to council must consult on road names with all the affected property owners serviced by roads in the development, even if the properties serviced by those roads are outside the development. So to me, that is Harper's Ave and Thompson. But I could be wrong.
So through you, Chair, they have not been consulted as per that roading policy, or was that because this is after the fact of when he applied?
I'll let Andrew talk to the public notification process for the subdivision, but the residents on Harper Avenue and Thompson Road, is that it? Their names and addresses are not affected.
Yeah, through the chair, I think, yeah, there's some ambiguity there, but I think the intent of the road naming policy was to obviously nominate the people within the development, not the service roads around the development, because at what point do you stop as to what road might be serviced by the developers? Because Mainlands Road could be included in that. So I think it's the intent of the document is probably where there's been a probably misunderstanding here.
Yeah, I agree. I just think a reasonable and practical person, you know, like looking at this would say, if you were directly affected by it, rather than you were, I don't know, you had to drive through 2 streets to get to it, then you would expect to be consulted, but I'm not sure that, yeah, I'm not sure about the intent. My other question is so if the board is of a mind to not support the recommendation, is there an alternative? It's not in keeping with is that the reason?
My answer was no, because for me, reading on that policy, we hadn't publicly notified those, the Thompson and the Harper's Ave that we're going to go into there.
Sorry, can I just,
Not the names themselves.
can I just raise a point there? 5.3.1, anyone wishing to recommend a road name? So we're talking about those 3 road names, Wiltshire, Rothery and Anderson, correct? A road name to the council must consult on the road names. We're still talking about the same 3 road names, I'm assuming. Picking the road names with all affected property owners serviced by the roads in the development. It's still those 3 roads, even if the property serviced by those roads, those 3 we're talking about, are outside the development. I think we've got this round the wrong way. What that is trying to get at is if we were now having to rename Thompson Ave and Harpers, and people had to drive through Thompson Ave and Harpers to get into the new roads, then we would have had to, then we have to ask, because now they are giving instructions. If you're driving from my house to there, you go down, you turn into Harpers Ave, and then you turn into the new one. All right. So those people living in what it says, those roads are inside the development. If we were renaming Harpers Ave, somebody living inside the development now has to take a different road. It's not good English, but if you go consistently on those roads, I think we got this round the wrong way.
So the great recommendation would be to revisit our road naming policy.
No problem. And we said we were thinking about putting together a second motion to revisit the road naming policy. I have no problem with that. Revisit that. I just think if we say no to this, we are being inconsistent to previous developments. That's my thought.
Through the chair, I think going on what Trish and Andrew have said, the fact that there's the consent, through the consent application, the developer has the opportunity to name those roads, which admittedly contradicts what 5.3.1 says. When this comes to council, I'd have to say that I'd recommend that we name those, we allow the naming of those roads, because it's been considered. It wasn't, unfortunately, Trish, it wasn't in the report to say that there was preceded, or the decision preceded the road naming policy. If that was in there, it would have been a lot clearer for me at the start. But I now know that. And so if it came to council, even though the community board hasn't recommended the changing those names, as the chair of the council, I'd probably have to overrule the decision of the community board.
I recommend we could probably have another vote, and this has been a really worthwhile discussion.
Oh, it's been
Because-
absolutely worthwhile
Yeah,
discussion, because it's
and
highlighted
without
some
the votes
inconsistencies.
against, we wouldn't have had it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Through you, Chair, sorry, can I just ask one more question? Just to clarify in my mind. In that road naming policy, it says about the consultation, which came after the fact of when he applied, because it wasn't there at the time, correct? We didn't have a road naming policy, so when the developer applied, that was after he applied, or correct? Yeah, so in the sense of that policy now, which now one recommendation is that it needs to be reviewed, especially for heritage and for Ōtorohanga and the community of Ōtorohanga, as well, is that I understanding that Nehe Nui and Maniapoto were consulted, but no reply came back. Is that right? I just want to clarify that.
Correct.
Okay.
And that happens through you, Chair. We have resource consents go out all the time to our various iwi partners, and not all of them, they don't respond to all of them. They don't show an interest, in all of them for particular reasons.
So through you, Chair, just to get my mind right, you still then can go through your processes. You take that as that they don't say yes or no, and that's where it lies from that's your past experience through all the years. Right.
Yep.
Sorry, through the chair, it goes with everything, Joe. When we go out to notify the public, we don't get anything back from the public. There's no objection, so we carry on.
And to be fair, when this probably went to them, our relationships are so much better now. So if it went to them now, I pretty much would say 99% sure we would get a response, because we've worked hard at those relationships.
And I think for that, it's you work on phone response. Andrew, I have another question. How many developments have we got that were started before the road policy that are yet to be completed?
I couldn't give you any answer to that question.
So there could be some more like this.
We've got at least 3 on my desk now.
started before the road naming.
Oh, sorry.
New ones, eh?
Yeah, I mean, there is a number of historic private right of ways that need naming. I mean, from decades ago, actually. And new developments, maybe one or two. I couldn't be certain. But sit down.
Through you this year, we'd have to take a look because sometimes it's a long process. An application is made for a subdivision and often it's years before they put a spade in the ground, and the naming of a road really happens, in the last stages when they're physically formed and trying to connect all the underground services and issue titles and things like this. So this happens quite late in the process. So we'd have to go back and look at those dates, but there could well be some that started early, but the application was put in early into this policy. It's also worth noting this is the first road naming report since this policy was adopted. And we always say with our policies that you need to put them through a bit of a test process. Even looking at it ourselves, there are a few things we had some discussions about, but we're putting it into practice. Does this make sense? So yeah, maybe it's a potential joint workshop.
Thanks.
Okay, and item 8, Ōtorohanga Community Board members code of conduct. Okay, and handing over to manager governance.
Thank you, Chair. The Code of Conduct was presented in December and it is now represented to the board for approval. Now that you've had a chance to digest it, I'll take the report as read if anyone has any questions.
Okay, no questions. Just noted that the year was going to be updated from 2022 to 2023. And 5.1. Sorry, 2023 is 2022. Okay, and a mover and a seconder. Katrina, seconder. All in favour? And against. And carried. Okay, and item 9, elected members allowance and reimbursement policy. And handing over to Graham.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is a copy of the report that was adopted by Council for Christmas regarding elected members' allowances and reimbursement. So of particular interest to the community board will be what's been adopted for them, which is around communication devices. We don't provide them with a laptop, so we're paying allowance instead. So on top of board members' salary, which is determined by the Remuneration Authority, they'll receive a annual allowance of $725. And that covers the cost of phone, internet, printer, etc. At home. And then in fact, you might have to provide your own device. The policy that was adopted by council is attached, which I'll take as read, but if members have any questions on that policy, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, and so no questions. And move that the report be received. And the sector. All in favour? Against? And carry. Okay, and we've got project updates. So project one being picnic in the park, and just handing over to Tori for an update.
Okay, so an update is, at the moment, we have 5 food trucks, local food trucks coming, and 2 community groups coming. I haven't heard from any other community groups that are interested, but I am still, if they want to come, they can. We have had a local band volunteer to play at both events. They're called Yada Yada, and they're a country folk and blues band. So they'll play from start to finish. I just want to thank Joe for following up for the power. So we have power from Domain Sports. 2, just for the entertainment. So all the food trucks have to bring their own generators. Another thing was that I wanted to mention was publicity. So I think because it's just with my page that I'm pushing it out. I know that we discussed getting in touch with other groups in Ōtorohanga that have pages. Don't want to point any out directly, but it's been really hard for me to get the ad of the food truck event onto those pages. I'm not sure whether it's because it's Tory Muller for like a community board member or yeah. So I just wanted to kind of pick brains on that. And the last point was that we're in search for a gazebo and wasn't sure whether council had access to one just for the band to be covered.
Is there any questions for Tori?
No, but I can help you push it out on social media.
I think also it's important to mention, so I said that there were 5 food trucks coming locally. I did invite more, so I did invite quite a few actually from neighbouring places and even went so far as Hamilton. But with something like this, you know, and you're kind of matching up with a similar picnic thing like Gourmet in the Gardens, which is huge, and places, you know, food trucks from further away, they don't know kind of what to expect because it hasn't been done before. So we're hoping that this one here will be a good turnout, and then follow on from that, just build from there.
What size gazebo do you need?
I'm not really good at measuring out of the thing.
Corey, what the gazebo is going to be used for, the band's going to be inside it playing, are they, or is that right?
Oh, yeah, just to cover them,
Okay.
Yeah.
So the company I work for has a pretty big one. So I might be able to approach them and see if they, whether it's suitable is
Yeah,
another story, but
yeah.
so I can ask them, and it's actually a really sizable one, so it'll take a bit of putting up there. And I won't be there to help you.
And I can push out on my pages too, but I'll follow up with some of those community groups. Yeah, we might just be able to give them an individual one for that post.
Just talking on the community groups, I know there's been a bit of talk around about it on the question page and so on. I have, which I've just got from Deb Hill a few days ago, quite a thick of these type of things found together, but it's a bit more than that. The problem being, so it was all the community groups, but the problem being it's about a 2008 or 9. So my promise, don't laugh, Robbie. my promise to Deb is I'll get it photocopied. I'll get the photocopying done tomorrow because it's on my little list of things to do. I can then I'll scan it and I can get that circulated to all of you. I just can't promise that it's still. You will see and you will probably know, but at least it's a starting place, and we can work on updating it or making it accurate or whatever.
And so we've got it for February, March. Can you just confirm the dates, Tori?
Sorry, so it's February the 24th of March and February the 24th and March the 24th.
And what time was it started?
5 to 8, 5 p.m.
Any other questions? Help assistance? No. Okay. And so next on here is the resolutions register. So the resolutions register has been created to show items not yet finalised or to give an update on items from the last triennium. Are there any questions about the register?
Through you, Chair. On the 5th of the 8th, 21, or the 6th of the 5th, 21, resolved that the Ōtorohanga Community Board supports in principle the recognition of the Lions Club and the contribution they have. That part there, do I have to read it all or? Got, and then it says the resolution was not action due to a subsequent resolution by the board referred to the below resolution. So that will be removed. I am fine with that. But when you go down to the 5th of the 8th, 21, resolve that A, the Ōtorohanga Community Board recommend to council that the Ōtorohanga domain retains its current name, and B, request council to give consideration to preparing a naming rights policy of some description for the future. You've got the action, that's what it is. It says, see the above comment, which said to see the below comment. And then it says this resolution will be removed from the register. I'd like to know if B, that request council to give consideration to preparing a naming rights policy of some description for the future. That hasn't been done or has been done, because then you can't really remove that from the register unless it has been done. So that one then effectively does have to still stand. I don't know, but what doesn't say anything there to say they do or don't. They said they recommend the community board request council to give consideration. So nothing's come back, it still has to stay on. Okay. Can that be noted, please?
Yeah, so we'll note in the 5/8/2021 at B, request council to give consideration to preparing a naming rights policy of some description for the future.
Through to the chair, I think the request has been made. So is the resolution complete? Then it's up to council to fulfill that.
I think just based on this, does it say that resolution have been made?
No, let's give consideration, so.
With the register, this needs to be updated to reflect that one was.
Right, so it reads, request council to give consideration to preparing a naming rights policy, so the request I assume has been done at that point that the
Has
minutes.
it come back to say it's been done like the others?
So the request has been done. Are you saying, you know, that you'd like to have that remain on there until the policy is done?
No.
Right,
It just says, it doesn't say that. It says B, request council to give consideration, and on here, I haven't seen that come back in relation to others that say, for example, a quote has been sought from an appropriate qualified electrician, so you're coming back on that, another, you know, the way that the action part is, yeah.
just so there's some clarity there, yeah.
It says request council, is that? That's not staff though, is it? It's council, and I don't think it has been gone to council. That's how I read it.
Because to me, that would then read, if you want to remove it from the register, it would read that there's been a solution and that a request has been done, and you will hear about that request, be it yay or nay, but it doesn't even read any of that. You're just removing something to me that hasn't been done yet. So we need to,
Right,
Yes.
we'll seek some clarification around that.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At the risk of waking a sleeping giant, can the two naming policies not be run concurrently?
Sorry. I think that the request is for consideration for a naming policy and
And any other questions or clarifications on that? Okay, so I am declaring the meeting that the Ōtorohanga Community Board received staff updates on the resolution register. Subject to retaining clarification on the 5/8/21.
Yes.
Okay, so all in favour? Linda? Joe, seconder? Katrina? All in favour? Against? Carried. And declare the meeting closed, 5:10.